Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. If you have not done so already, what are you waiting for? Sign up for the Locked On Cougars Insider Group. Get the inside intel I am hearing on all things BYU. It's all sourced, it's all vetted. And if you guys want it comes to your phone in the form of a text message, and you can fire back with thoughts of your own. And always appreciate your guys' support. And if you want to join today, it's just $5 a month to be a part of the Insiders Group. And the kicker is you get a 14-day free trial, 2 full weeks to see if it's the right option for you guys. So if you're so interested, click the link in the show notes below, whether you're watching and or listening to this, or reach out to us via social media or email, and we'll get you squared away with the Locked On Cougars Insider Group. All right, so before we go on today's show, the report came out in USA Today over the weekend that tax records indicate that revenues across all of the power conferences, we're talking SEC, Big 10, Big 12, and ACC, as well as the Pac-12, even though it's going to be going under a little bit of a rebrand here, all of them were down for the fiscal year 2024. How concerning should that be for Cougar fans? I think the bigger point is, as they point out in this article, that it appears to be more of a one-year blip. The other thing is, I've seen some people out there with regards to the ACC who have been very intent on trying to hold this over on the Big 12, saying, see, the ACC is not in as bad a spot as some people would have. They're ahead of the Big 12. Okay, here's the deal. The Big 12 signed a deal when they signed it to get themselves into the mix, because remember, it was very clearly stated that the offer to the Big 12 and the Pac-12 was the same deal in essence. And the first person to take it was the person that was the conference that was going to get it. The other one was going to be left out in the cold. That would have been the death knell for the Big 12 had Brett Yormark not pounced on the opportunity with the Big 12. The nice part was it was a relatively short-term deal, 6 years, in fact. And BYU this past year in the fiscal year 2024 made about $20 million. This coming year, they will finally be what they're calling a full share member of the Big 12 conference, and they will finally get the full allotment of the money that is being allotted to them. So last year, the per-school payouts for the Big 12 ranged from $37.8 million to $42.1 million for schools other than the newcomers in BYU, Houston, Central Florida, and Cincinnati, who average about $20 million a piece. The larger payouts were fourth among the Power Five, only surpassing that of the Pac-12. And obviously the Pac-12, it all but died. Now it's going to go under a bit of a rebrand, add new schools, and it's going to be a part of the G5 or G6 going forward. But the nice part is, as it mentions here from Steve Berkowitz, the conference total revenue declined by about $17 million from the fiscal year 2023, and the conference reported nearly $37 million annual operating deficit. But that is because, as I mentioned, the revenue in 4 areas covered by tax records increased. Its bowl revenue dropped from just over $157 million to $110.6 million. There you go. That is nearly $37 million on the dot, and that explains why BYU and the Big 12 were at an operating deficit. The nice part is it appears that these numbers are all going to increase next year, and obviously the pro rata agreement and the kick-in of the full media rights still here for the Big 12 should mean that the Big 12 is in for a better year in fiscal year 2025, and that should encourage you as Cougar fans. The ACC, for everything that has been talked about, is that the ACC number stayed essentially static from year to year, fiscal year-wise. That's not good for that league. Because remember, that league has had all kinds of issues. Remember, they had to rework their deal now where TV ratings, among other factors, are going to pay some schools more than other schools. That's not a healthy thing for a league to have schools who are going to make more than others because of TV ratings and the like. Because simply put, a program like Wake Forest is never going to get the eyeballs that Clemson is going to get. Guess who's going to get more money? Clemson. Guess who's going to be a little bit spurned by that? Wake Forest. I like the fact that the Big 12, yes, they may have taken a hit in fiscal year 2024, but they're going to rebound in a big way, it appears, in 2025. And was it 2035 is when the ACC deal comes up for renegotiation. Well, the Big 12 will go back to market in 2030 and should have a second deal in theory that should surpass what the ACC is paying out and should have another half-decade head start in terms of renegotiating. Maybe potentially when the ACC comes back up again, the Big 12 could be back in negotiations a second time. I know this is probably flying over some of y'all's head, and I get it, but here's the deal. The Big 12 was in fourth place this past year in revenues. The thing is, the ACC maybe made more last year, but when their revenue stayed static, that means if they continue to stay static, they're going to be stuck at the same number for years to come. And the Big 12 deal, it only increases in revenue over time. Now, with the added impact of the House settlement and the $20+ million revenue share that comes into effect, you're talking about ACC schools having to carve into their already massive budgets that a lot of them are operating in the red or at a deficit. They have to carve out another $20 million. They're going to immediately go turn back to the conference and say, hey, we need more money. And the conference is going to say, we don't have any more. I actually like the way that the Big 12 has structured this thing. I think that what Brett Yormark did, he had a bold vision for this league. He said, hey, you know what? We're going to sign a shorter term deal that maybe doesn't pay out as much money right now, but we're going to prove our worth in the meantime. And when we go back to market at the end of the decade, we're going to make up money then. Will it ever approach what the SEC and the Big Ten are making? Probably not, because those two are the darlings of the two major networks. Speaking of ESPN, if you're the SEC, and Fox Sports, if you're the Big Ten, and they're going to be the favored children in terms of the amount of money they're being paid out by those networks. But there's no reason to think that the Big 12, it can't continue to be that third and the premier third conference among the Power Four teams. The ACC should be quaking in its boots, and it feels like they're sitting there wondering, okay, how's this really going to go? Well, I think that they got a short-term solution by agreeing to a new deal that is going to pay out those bigger schools with more revenue, but it's only going to last for so long. We're going to continue to hear about the likes of Clemson, Florida State, Miami, all wanting to jump potentially to the SEC or to the Big Ten, or heck, maybe even some of them do venture a query out there to the Big 12 about potentially rejoining the Big 12. If the Big 12 can make as much money as I believe it can make in time, that's a good sign, because that means that there is stable footing for the Big 12 conference. And as members of the Big 12 and in good standing, speaking of BYU, should be feeling pretty good about themselves. I love the way that BYU operates. It's one of the upstanding athletic departments in terms of it has to operate off of the revenue that it makes. It's never going to be able to operate at a loss like other schools are. The University of Utah had a $17 million deficit last year because of the cratering media rights that the Pac-12 paid out. They have to dig themselves out of that hole. And the sad part is, us as taxpayers in the state of Utah, we're probably going to have to foot part of that with regards to the amount of money that we're putting in to Utah athletics. That's not the way that BYU operates. BYU always operates in the black. They don't spend more than they make. And that is going to make BYU in eras to come, because at some point that balloon is going to pop, and the thought that more money is just going to keep flowing into the coffers, at some point it's not going to happen. And there are going to be a bunch of athletic departments out there that are going to be in dire straits, cutting athletic programs, trying to cut all kinds of different things just to keep themselves afloat. So long as BYU adheres to the principles it's always adhered to, and that is living within its means, they're going to be in a great spot. And the Big 12 also appears it's in a pretty solid spot as well to keep that revenue flowing towards Brigham Young University and its member schools. Even if they were in fourth place this year, I think that they'll be in third place for the foreseeable future. In the ACC, it can eat its heart out, because it feels like at some point the ACC is going to implode upon itself. And that's going to be a very interesting time, whether it's in 3 years, 4 years, or 10 years from now. Something is going to happen. All right, that'll do it for this edition of the podcast. As always, thank you for y'all's support. I really appreciate you guys being with us, and continue to subscribe, rate, review, share it with your family and friends. Let us know how we also can improve. We're always open to open feedback. If you want to just take pot shots at me, that's not what it's here for. I like constructive criticism. Let's just put it that way. So as always, thank you for all of your support of the podcast. Please, once again, make sure you join us every single day and become what we like to call an everydayer. And once again, thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day.